Hey everybody, and Tony here with my review of Stadt, Land, Meer, also known in English as Cities, Land, and Oceans, which I saw at the Haus des Rundfunks Berlin. The conductor was Roderick Cox. The texts were written by Tauchgold, consisting of Heike Tauch and Florian Goldberg. The pianist was Ju Kossuge. The composers and synthesizer players were Nathalie Sender and Eliad Wagner, and the actresses were Svenja Lisau and Bettina Popov. Tonight's program did not only feature compositions by Nathalie Sender and Eliad Wagner, but also by Claude Debussy, Krzysztof Penderecki, Dai Fujikura, Christopher Charonne, and Sarah Nemstov. I was really excited to check out this particular concert because Nathalie Sender premiered her work, Oceanic Oscillations for the Synthesizer, Symphony Orchestra, and Human Voice, at the Haus des Rundfunks Berlin, and I was quite curious to hear how it was going to sound like. I should know because Nathalie Sender was also one of my dearest colleagues and dearest friends during my undergraduate years at the Humboldt University of Berlin, especially considering that musicology was my minor subject. I also heard some of her works on social media, but was quite curious to see and hear how her recent work was going to sound like live. Suffice it to say, Oceanic Oscillations was quite the thrill ride from beginning to end, and I was completely immersed into what her piece of work managed to do with me, as well as how much it was able to provoke me to perceive not only my overall environment, but also make me immersed as the viewer and the listener to just be in touch with the ocean and its surroundings. I say this as a viewer and listener because Nathalie Sender's Oceanic Oscillations combines technological synthesizing, especially found in how she was able to manipulate not only technology, but also those sounds captured from the ocean, and even use technology to mimic those oceanic waves, as well as the overall atmosphere and tension that one feels when being in contact with the ocean, with analogous orchestra playing found in the Radio Symphonieorchester Berlin, thus combining technological prowess from the synthesizers to the usage of counterpoint and harmony with the orchestra to create the necessary tension, atmosphere, imagery, and sensory impulses to make viewers and listeners totally immersed with the world building that they can take in. When implementing the recorded sounds with manipulating the synthesizer to create atmosphere, as well as combining the orchestra's grandiosity, Nathalie Sender's Oceanic Oscillations definitely does its job at establishing not only the imagery, but also the overall atmosphere, all thanks to her fine use of counterpoint and harmony, especially considering that the use of the F major chord from the cellos to the violas to the violins and even to the rest of the instrumentalists managed to make her work an absolute thrill ride from beginning to end. It wasn't just Nathalie Sender's Oceanic Oscillations that was the absolute treat, but also Claude Debussy's La Mer, which had 3 movements. The first one being De l'aube à midi sur la mer, the second being Jeu de vagues, and the third one being Dialogue du vent et de la mer. Basically, these also involved the theme of the ocean's might as well as its mystery, with the first movement being especially thrilling considering that huge sweeping melody, especially when the percussion comes into play, thus making me as the listener and the viewer totally in awe with all the key changes happening from major to minor and to that grandiosity of the F sharp major key and the very end of this piece, as well as Debussy's La Mer's 3 movements, reminding me those of Richard Wagner's leitmotifs and grand orchestral scores, and Gustav Mahler's equally powerful orchestral scores, thus making me as the viewer and listener absolutely enthralled with what I was about to get myself into. There was that sense of grandiosity, power, and absolute thrill that Roderick Cox emitted from the orchestra, from the very powerful opener of De l'aube à midi sur la mer, to the equally thrilling Jeu de Vague, and to the mysterious yet absolutely thrilling Dialogue du vent et de la mer. There was not one moment where I thought something was lagging. In fact, everything was conducted with speed, especially appropriate speed for this particular concert piece, the appropriate power needed to make Debussy's La Mer absolutely thrilling, and conscientiousness of the key changes occurring from each movement, thus making Roderick Cox's mastery as a conductor absolutely grand all the way through, especially when he pumps out that, especially when he fortifies that electricity and energy from the Radio Symphonie Orchestra Berlin. Another orchestral highlight was Christoph Penderecki's Trenos, the Victims of Hiroshima, for 52 string instruments, which also had that thrilling sensation, as well as using dissonance to make those strings reminiscent of those victims who are just crying out for help in Hiroshima, as well as emphasizing and illustrating their desperate situations and the pain and trauma that each and every victim was feeling during that time in Hiroshima. This in turn correlates to one of the victims of the Hiroshima bombing, who was a young woman by the name of Akiko Kawamoto, who was a Japanese-American girl born from Japanese parents in the United States of America, but when she was a young girl, she moved to Japan alongside her parents, and the one thing that she had growing up was her piano, which she would always play. However, as Hiroshima was being bombed, she didn't end up surviving the bombing and ended up dying at only 19 years old, with her parents burying her under a persimmon tree, especially with her last words to her parents being, "I want a very red tomato." So this particular piece, with its dissonant chords and eerie string sounds from the violins to the violas to the cellos, capture that particular desperation and that pain and trauma from that sorrowful and painful period of time. And it was just as much of a powerful experience. Eliade Wagner's Infinite Coastlines and Christopher Charone's The Insects Became Magnetic were also quite interesting pieces to listen to, because Eliade Wagner's Infinite Coastlines also used recorded sounds and even manipulated some electronics to create atmosphere, tension, and using our ears and eyes to perceive what sounds are being played and even what sounds are being mimicked, thus provoking a heightened sense of auditory awareness to the environment they're in, as well as Christopher Charone also using the orchestra and technology to create a heightened sense of auditory and visual perception, and Sara Nemtsov's Tikkun combining charm as well as thrills to make this piece all the more worth listening to. And even the spoken texts written by Tauchgold, specifically Akiko's story spoken by Fritzi Haberland, as well as the other texts spoken by Svenja Lisau and Vidina Popov, were also welcome additions to this concert, thus using satire and the spoken word to correlate very well with the orchestral music and the technological sounds that were being played, and even to further solidify the themes of our world that is ever changing, and sometimes we can't always just keep on progressing all the time, but also find the time to find healing, not only within this world, but also within ourselves, because these texts also prove that yes, the world may be chaotic, but if we stand together, if we learn to help each other, and if we learn to just show compassion to each other, then we can also find our way to healing, which may not be easy, but it's something that's worthwhile. And that's the main takeaway that I managed to acquire from this concert. Natural disasters may occur. Sometimes the world just changes way too much before our very eyes, but there's always going to be healing from the wounds. It may take a lot of time, it may take a lot of change, but more than anything, healing is what we need to make this world a better place. So this was a very interesting concert when combining Debussy's grand compositions with Penderecki's experimental pieces and even the new compositions done by especially Nathalie Sende, Eliade Wagner, Christopher Cerrone, Dai Fuchikura, and Sara Nemstov. Special acknowledgement also has to go to Yu Kosuge on the piano for also presenting technical prowess as well as keen precision in her piano playing for her main solos being Akiko's Diary for the piano, which she was able to pull off very well, thus illustrating Akiko's innocence as well as who she is as an aspiring young pianist whose spirit lives on in that piano, and Yu Kosuge absolutely nailed it so well. And as I stated before, it was a very interesting evening for watching this concert with grand orchestrations combined with technological experimentations, being such an eclectic mix. I was definitely in awe of the talent that was brimming tonight. From the instrumentalists to the composers to even the conductor himself and even to the actresses, everybody was at their A game and nobody was the weak link. They were all strong all the way through, and I salute each and every one of them for what they were able to accomplish. And for those of you who watched Statt, Land, Meer at the Haus des Rundfunks Berlin, what'd you think of it? Did you really enjoy all of the orchestral pieces? Did you have a personal favorite one, especially with Claude Debussy's La Mer or even Nathalie Sende's Oceanic Oscillations? Did you feel like everybody from the instrumentalists to the composers to the conductor and even to the actresses managed to be in their A game? Or did you feel like there was something that was not to your liking? Please comment below and let me know. Well, that's it for my review of Statt, Land, Meer at the Haus des Rundfunks Berlin. Tune in next time for my review of Puccini's La Bohème starring Cristina Passarollo as Mimi. So until then, good night everybody.